Discover the incredible journey. Heartwarming call for help exposes a hidden pilot in row 13. In the bustling city of Chicago, a storm was brewing high in the skies as Sarah, a hardworking single mother in her early 30s, boarded her flight, clutching her daughter's handmade drawing. It represented the dreams of reconciliation, a reunion with her estranged father, a retired veteran living miles away in a small town. With the weight of 2 jobs pressing down like an anvil, she sighed deeply, her heart racing with uncertainty yet driven by fierce determination. In row 13, she slipped into her seat beside Tom, who appeared unassuming, just another passenger. Little did anyone know, he was a retired airline pilot, hidden behind an ordinary facade, waiting for a chance to navigate through the storm that life had thrown him into. As the flight ascended, a sudden jolt shook them, the aircraft lurching in the turbulence. Anxiety rippled through the cabin, passengers clutching their armrests, their faces painted with worry. Sarah held on tight, her heart pounding in her chest. Tom, however, sprung into action, his demeanor shifting from quiet to calm, surprising everyone around him. He moved with purpose and authority, like a lighthouse guiding a ship through the fog. Whispers flooded the air, threads of stories about lost jobs, family heartbreaks, and deferred dreams mingled in the buzzing cabin. "Have you ever felt like life just bulldozes over you?" a woman remarked across the aisle, her voice trembling with raw emotion. Sarah listened, her heart aching, resonating with their collective struggle. It wasn't just turbulence shaking the plane, it was the tumult of lives intertwining, each person wrestling with their own burdens. In a vulnerable moment, Sarah reached for her phone. Her hands trembled as she prepared to message her father, memories flooding back. Years gone by filled with stubbornness and misunderstandings hurtled through her mind, deepening the rift that had formed over time. She caught Tom's approving nod and felt a flicker of hope, as if the universe nudged her to bridge the chasm. But just as Tom began to address the situation, tensions rose. Flight attendants, initially dismissive, began questioning Tom's qualifications. The concern shifting in their eyes screamed judgment, an idea festering like an unwelcome guest. "Who does he think he is?" murmured a man, cutting through the clamor. The unease grew as whispers of disdain emerged, fear of the unknown loomed larger than the cabin itself. "He's just a mechanic." Sarah's heart sank. Prejudice washed over her, reflected in their faces. Here they were, all caught in a moment of vulnerability, yet some couldn't see past preconceived notions. Staring at Tom, Sarah felt a surge of indignation. No, she thought fiercely, this isn't right. Everyone deserves a chance. She stood beside him, voicing her unwavering belief that a person's worth shouldn't be solely defined by his past. Their experiences folded together the promise of the American dream caught in the tension of lives intertwined. The plane stabilized, yet the storm still brewed inside her heart. She locked eyes with Tom and inhaled deeply, embracing the hope that flickered between them. But as the aircraft began its descent, so too did the weight of her uncertainties. Would the authorities recognize Tom's potential to save them, or would biases tether him down? And in this swirling storm, could she find the courage to forgive her father, to mend what was broken? As the ground rushed up to meet them, Sarah's heart thudded in her chest, uncertainties entwined with hope. With lives on the line, could they rise above the chaos, or would their pasts keep them grounded forever? The cabin settled back into a tense silence, the sounds of foreboding whispers echoing as shadows crept into the corners of Sarah's mind. She glanced at Tom, whose composed face soothed her racing heart. Memories of her daughter's drawing flashed before her eyes, vibrant colors promising a future filled with joy, yet all they had was this troubling present. The flight attendants, still unsure, glanced in Tom's direction. With a resolute nod, he stepped briskly toward the cockpit, urgency behind each stride. A few passengers shot him curious glances, and there was a mix of skepticism and fear swirling around the cabin. Would the man who once soared through the clouds now navigate them through this storm? As the turbulence intensified, Sarah felt a burden welling up inside. She couldn't stay silent. Fueled by Tom's courage, she took a deep breath, her heart thumping in sync to the tumult around her. "Listen," she called out, her voice stronger than she felt. This man knows what he is doing. He is a pilot. We need to trust him. Questions bubbled up among the passengers. How could they trust someone who looked so ordinary? How could they abandon their fears so easily? But Sarah pressed on, tears brimming at the corners of her eyes as she opened her heart to everyone in the cabin. He is just like us, fighting through his own storms. We can't let our doubts blind us to the truth. A moment of silence followed her declaration, punctuated only by the sound of the plane bucking against invisible forces. Slowly, a few heads nodded, uncertain yet willing to believe. One passenger, a young woman in a bright yellow raincoat, shot her a grateful smile. "You're right. We need to stand together." Encouraged, Sarah looked back at Tom, whose eyes gleamed with determination. He must have felt the shift in the atmosphere too, the weight of their collective burden lightened just a fraction. It was like seeing the sun breaking through layers of dark clouds. Tom returned, stepping forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to help." His voice rang with authority, earned by years of experience. "I need everyone's support to make this work. We're descending, and I'm going to need everyone to remain calm." The murmurs quieted, fear transformed into a tentative kind of hope. As they all held their breath, Sarah tightened her grip on her daughter's drawing, seeking comfort in that simple image of unity. The flight attendants exchanged looks, abandoning their initial skepticism as they moved to assist Tom. "Let us prepare for landing," one announced, her tone now a mixture of reverence and relief. They began instructing passengers on emergency procedures, while others, emboldened by Sarah's words, offered encouragement to those around them. Even amid uncertainty, a kinship blossomed. Strangers began sharing personal stories of struggle and resilience, moments of vulnerability shining brightly. Sarah felt an invisible thread of connection weaving through the cabin, stitching together fractured lives. As they broke through the clouds, the landscape below unfolded, revealing the sprawling stretch of land that awaited them. Yet nothing felt more immense than the transformation occurring within their hearts. Each passenger, including Sarah, began to forget their fears just a little, opening up to the possibility that healing could come from even the worst storms. But as laughter started to mingle with the rising tension before descent, Sarah's phone buzzed in her pocket, jolting her back to the reality waiting back home. A brief glance showed a notification from her father. It read simply, "Are you on your way?" Waves of anxiety crashed over her once more. As the wheels touched the tarmac, would she still have the courage to reach out? Would she sweep away the shadows of hurt and embrace forgiveness? The flight was almost over, but Sarah realized it was only the beginning of another journey. As the plane rolled to a stop, Sarah felt as though she had been holding her breath for hours. She finally exhaled, a shaky release that matched the relief sweeping through the cabin. The once terrifying noise of the engines had subdued to a soft hum, masking the heartbeat of uncertainty echoing within her. Around her, passengers were awakening from a shared nightmare, laughter and applause breaking through the lingering fog of fear. Tom emerged from the cockpit, his features softened by a grin of triumph. Sarah watched as he unfastened his seatbelt, his posture more relaxed now that they had landed safely. But what should have been a moment of complete joy was also laced with the weight of Sarah's thoughts, a heavy reminder of her fractured relationship with her father. She clutched her phone tightly. "Thank you, Tom." Someone shouted from the back, and the ripple of gratitude spread like wildfire, reigniting that spirited connection they had just forged. "Yeah, you saved us." Another chimed in, and soon, every passenger was cheering loudly, showering Tom with admiration. It was a beautiful sight. Strangers transformed into a community, yet Sarah was paralyzed, her heart racing so loudly it drowned out the celebrating voices around her. She glanced back at the notification on her phone. "Are you on your way?" It seemed like a simple query, yet it rooted her in place, shadowing the bright moment with a darkness she hadn't completely faced. Would her father understand her struggles? Did he even want to? "Hey, are you okay?" asked the young woman in the yellow raincoat who had encouraged Sarah earlier. "You look like you just saw a ghost." Sarah managed a tight smile, but her eyes overflowed with unshed tears. I got a message from my dad. I haven't spoken to him in years. The girl's brows knitted together in empathy. Maybe it's time to reach out. Life's too short, right? With that simple statement, clarity washed over Sarah. The turbulence they'd just survived mirrored her own inner storms. She could either let fear dictate her actions or embrace the potential for healing that had bloomed in the cabin. The choice lay with her, just like Tom had chosen to face adversity head-on. As she slid her finger across the screen of her phone, ready to respond, a voice came over the intercom. It was Tom. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience and cooperation. We've landed safely, and our ground crew will be assisting you shortly. With every word, Sarah felt the weight of the past begin to lift. She looked around the cabin, seeing faces now marked with relief and even joy. There was a bond here, a unity that went beyond a mere flight. These people had stared fear in the face together. Incredible how things change in moments like this, she murmured under her breath. Her heart was still unsure, but a flicker of hope ignited. She composed a response to her father, her fingers dancing over the screen, revealing a small piece of her heart. I'm back home now. Can we talk? Just as she pressed send, a loud bang reverberated through the cabin. A final farewell from the engines, but also an ominous echo of uncertainty. Heads turned sharply toward the source of the sound, tension instantly gripping the air once more. What was that? The voice of another passenger, laced with confusion and worry, broke the spell of camaraderie. Sarah's heart raced again as the flight attendants shared glances that hinted at another storm brewing. What had just been a moment of reconnection and hope now twisted back toward anxiety. Would they truly be out of danger? And what was this new threat lurking in the shadows of their shared triumph? As the cabin buzzed with questions, Sarah knew that this was not just the end of one journey. It might just be the beginning of another. The cabin fell into a tense silence, punctuated only by the shuffle of restless feet and murmurs of uncertainty. Sarah's heart pounded wildly in her chest, a frenzied drumbeat drowned out by mounting fears. The cheerful atmosphere had vaporized, leaving behind a cloud of anticipation and dread. Tom's confident demeanor cracked slightly as he stepped closer, the cheers for his bravery replacing the uneasy stillness. Everyone stay calm, he said, raising his hands as if to still the growing storm around them. His voice was steady, but the flicker of concern in his eyes betrayed the adrenaline coursing through him. Did everyone hear that bang? Someone yelled from the back, the panic swiftly ricocheting through the seats. Tom took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the faces of frightened strangers. I'm sure it's nothing, just the landing gear settling, he reassured them, but even Sarah could see the hint of uncertainty in his smile. She squeezed her phone once more, hoping the reply from her father would come soon, even while grappling with the sudden anxiety in her gut. What's happening? The girl in the raincoat asked Sarah, shrugging her shoulders nervously. Something feels off, Sarah whispered back, her voice just above a murmur. I thought we were safe. Now her words trailed off, an unspoken worry clinging to them. Minutes dragged by, stretching like taut string across a delicate framework. The flight attendants moved with purpose, glancing back to Tom, and exchanging worried looks that only added to the growing concern. Then the alarms blared. Red lights flashed overhead, slicing through the tension like a knife. Prepare for emergency evacuation. The intercom announced, the urgency in the voice making dread swirl within Sarah. Wait, what? The scream from the front drew every eye forward, a wave of panic racing through the cabin. Tom's expression sharpened, and he took charge once more. Everyone, listen to me. Remain seated. We'll guide you. His voice rang out strong, but underneath it, Sarah could hear the waver of fear. In an instant, the plane transformed into a tightly wound coil of anxiety and confusion. Evacuate? Are we even in danger? She thought, eyeing the exits. Her heart raced with fresh terror. What had happened after they de-landed? Was it really just a bang, or something more sinister lurking beneath the surface? The passengers reacted, some shaking their heads while others clutched their belongings, torn between the impulse to escape and the hope that it was all a mistake. "Tom!" Sarah called out, rising instinctively despite the chaos. "What is going on?" Before he could respond, the cabin lights flickered ominously before plunging the space into half-light. The uncertainty settled like thick fog, crowding their minds and leaving Sarah feeling trapped in a moment where every second stretched painfully. What was going on? Just as fear clawed at her throat, she felt her phone vibrate in her pocket. With trembling hands, she pulled it out to see her father's name flash across the screen. Her heart leaped, but dread quickly shadowed it. Would she answer while everything hung in the balance? Then the intercom crackled again. "Honoring your safety is our priority. Please remain calm as we regroup and prepare for the next steps." A part of her screamed to call her father, to bridge that gap she had been so terrified of, but was this the right moment? Just as the thought crossed her mind, a loud roar, deeper and more menacing than before, echoed from outside. She turned her head towards the window, her heart trembling with the unknown. What had she stepped into, and could they truly navigate through this new storm together, just like they had before? As Sarah held her breath, another realization struck her. She wasn't just navigating her fears, she was in the middle of a life-altering crossroads. Would she muster the courage to confront both the danger in the air and the one that had kept her from her father for so long? The door would soon open, but would she be ready to step through? The urgency in the air was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Sarah glanced around the cabin, her mind racing. The faces staring back at her were a mix of fear and uncertainty, each person grappling with their own demons. Everyone was clutching something: their bags, their neighbors, even their own arms, as if seeking comfort in the touch. "Sarah!" Tom's voice boomed across the cabin, jolting her from her thoughts. "We need to remain as calm as possible. Please, listen to the flight attendants." He motioned for everyone to sit, his tone firm, yet she noticed the tremor in his hands. Even the bravest could crack under pressure. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, casting eerie shadows against the walls, and Sarah could feel her heart racing with each erratic pulse. She glanced at her phone again, willing her father's name to reappear as if sheer longing could summon him through the invisible waves. "Please, not now. Just answer," she whispered to herself, but the screen remained cold and silent. A young man sitting a few rows back shouted, "What if we need to get out? How long will we be stuck here?" Frantic questions ricocheted from person to person, each one intensifying the fear that hung like a thick fog in the air. "Focus, everyone!" Tom shouted again, effort spilling from his voice. His eyes met Sarah's, searching for reassurance as if he was uncertain, too. She knew he was trying, desperately attempting to hold this fracturing situation together by sheer will. How could he be the rock when even he seemed to feel the tremors of anxiety? The darkening overhead lights felt like a harbinger as the engines roared again, this time, loud enough to vibrate through bones. Everyone's expressions twisted further into panic, and it hit her. This wasn't just an emergency, it was a crisis unfolding before their eyes. "Okay," Sarah said, deciding she could no longer sit idle. "We've got to stay together. The only way out of this is to keep our heads." The words spilled out, not quite sure if they were meant for her or the people listening. Perhaps it was a plea to herself to wrest control back from the chaos. Tom nodded, a flicker of gratitude lighting his eyes. He looked more composed as he addressed the passengers again. "If we need to evacuate, remain calm and follow the instructions of the crew. We will all get through this together." There it was again, the crack in his voice, the fissures in his composure. A sudden, loud bang echoed from the outside, shaking the floor beneath them. The sound was jarring, sending a collective gasp through the cabin, and Sarah surged to her feet, heart hammering. "Stay seated," Tom shouted, but the invitations to sit down were ignored as chaos erupted. Sarah's eyes darted to the window, strained to see what had caused the terror outside. Did she see smoke? Or was it just shadows playing tricks on her mind? "Call your dad," whispered the girl in the raincoat, he'll know what to do. It was a simple suggestion, but Sarah hesitated. Could she call her father in a moment when every second felt opportune yet fraught with conflict? What if he was hiding from her too? Her breath caught in her throat as the realization struck her again that this wasn't just about the plane. It was about facing her truths, the fear that had kept them apart for all this time. I'm going to do it, she declared suddenly, her own voice cutting through the noise. Determined, she pressed her fingers against the screen, heart racing as she prepared to hit call. Just then, the plane lurched violently, tipping sideways, and Sarah grabbed the seat ahead of her, panic drawing tight in her chest. The cabin filled with screams, the raw sound of unbridled fear echoing in her ears. Would she even be ready to confront the phone call that could alter everything, or would the tumult outside swallow her whole before she got the chance? As she teetered on the brink of decision, another roar, a low, ominous growl seemed to promise that this was just the beginning. What awaited them outside, and would they survive to see it? The plane shook violently, and Sarah's heart raced in rhythm with the chaos. She clutched the back of the seat in front of her, her knuckles white with fear. The screams swirled around her, blending with the roar of the engines, creating a symphony of terror. Stay calm. Stay in your seats. Tom's voice sliced through the noise, but it felt distant, as if he were speaking from across a canyon. The cabin lights flickered again, plunging them into brief darkness before flickering back on, illuminating the frantic faces around her. The girl in the raincoat, no older than 15, was crying quietly, her big brown eyes darting around the cabin. Sarah felt a pang of protectiveness. Hey, she said, bending closer. What's your name? Lila, the girl whimpered, and Sarah brushed a hand on her shoulder, trying to convey strength she didn't quite feel. Lila, listen to me. We're going to be okay. Just breathe with me. Sarah inhaled sharply and exhaled slowly, hoping Lila would follow suit. The girl mirrored her movements, and Sarah felt a little steadiness return as they both focused on their breathing. Everyone, listen. Tom called out again, his voice struggling to maintain authority over the rising tide of panic. We need to. Another loud bang cut him off. This time, the plane tilted more, and people around her cried out, some clinging onto each other, their fear almost tangible in the cramped space. Each cry felt like a knife, stabbing through the thin veil of hope Sarah was trying to maintain. Sarah, what are you doing? The girl in the raincoat whispered, her voice shaking. I'm calling my dad, Sarah replied, though she had already lifted the phone in her hand, her finger poised over the call button. The moment felt monumental, like standing on the edge of a cliff. This phone call could be a lifeline, a chance to reconnect, to bring her father back into her life after years of silence. But what if it shattered their fragile relationship even more? She wrestled with her emotions, urgency mixing with hesitation. The plane lurched again, and she felt as if her stomach had dropped to her feet. No, no, no. She gasped. This time, she slammed her finger down, pressing the call button with the kind of fervor that resonated from deep within her. As the phone rang, Sarah's heart raced. With each ring, the fear of rejection weighed heavier on her heart. What if he didn't answer? What if he was too busy? Or worse, what if he couldn't help at all? Just when she was about to lose hope, a voice crackled through. Hello. It was her father, a mixture of surprise and concern coating his tone. Dad. It's Sarah. She leaned closer to the screen, desperate for a glimpse of his face, though the call was just a voice. Something's wrong with the plane. I need your help. Static crackled in her ear, and she could barely hear the reply, but she sensed the shift in her father's voice, the urgency rising like the tide. What do you mean? What's happening? Just hold on, she stammered, trying to keep calm despite the chaos swarming around her. There was a loud noise, and now we can't stabilize. Suddenly, the whole aircraft dipped again, and she felt the collective gasp of passengers ripple through the cabin. Panic ensued as people shouted, "What's happening? And are we going to crash?" Sarah, stay calm. Her dad urged, his voice firm. The sound of him calling her name grounded her amidst the chaos. This connection, so desperately needed, sparked a reminder of hope. I need you to help me think clearly. What do we do? She shouted above the rising intensity around her. I don't know. He replied, fear cutting deep into the cracks of his voice. Just keep talking to me. You can get through this. As his words filled her ears, calmness started to seep into her frantic thoughts. She realized she wasn't just fighting for survival, she was fighting for a chance to rebuild. While everything around her spiraled out of control, perhaps this moment could unite them once more, but as she glanced at the terrified faces, uncertainty weighed heavy. Would calling her father be enough to pull them all back from the brink? Before she could respond, the plane jolted one last time, tipping dangerously. The screams amplified, and the lights flickered violently again. They were on the cusp of something monumental, and Sarah understood that they had to act. Listen to me. She shouted again, her own voice rising above the din, fumbling for bravado. It was all or nothing now. We're all going to get through this together. Grab onto someone if you need to, but hold on. But little did she know that outside this chaos, another storm was brewing, one that would change everything they thought they knew about survival. The plane tumbled through the air like a leaf in a storm. Sarah's heart raced with each jolt, each scream, as she held tightly to Lila. The young girl was trembling, her eyes wide and terrified. Panic vibrated through the cabin like an electric current, and Sarah could almost feel the fear wrapping around them. Hold on tight. Sarah shouted, not just to Lila, but to everyone around her. She needed to believe they could survive this, together. She felt the weight of every passenger's gaze, a shared uncertainty that lingered in the air like a fog. Tom! What is going on? A man yelled from the front. The tension hung like a drumbeat, and Sarah's breath quickened in response. They needed answers, and fast. Tom stepped forward at the front of the cabin but stumbled, even the crew was struggling through the turbulence. We're having a severe mechanical issue, he shouted, his face pale, but his voice steady. We need to prepare for an emergency landing. Follow my instructions. An emergency landing? The words echoed in Sarah's mind, but panic felt too heavy to lift. Dad? She breathed, clutching her phone, her lifeline, as if it were a talisman against the chaos. Keep me on the line, her father urged, his voice breaking through the clamor. Look for the exits. Are there life vests under your seat? Yes. I think so. She replied, glancing at Lila. We need to keep our heads clear. Let's see if we can. Another violent shake knocked Sarah back against her seat. The plane pitched forward like a roller coaster, and screams erupted anew. The bile rose in her throat with the realization that they were truly plummeting. The cabin lights flickered with frantic intensity, illuminating faces filled with dread, faces mirroring her own. Breathe. Breathe. Sarah insisted, steering her focus back to Lila. She locked eyes with the girl, desperate to pull them both away from the brink of despair. But just then, Tom's voice emerged, cutting through the hysteria. Everyone, brace for impact. Get into the brace position. Sarah looked around, her heart pounding. She dropped her phone, its screen cracking against the floor. Panic clawed at her throat. She reached for Lila again. We have to do what he says. Now. With shaky breaths, they slowly bent over, heads down, knees up. Streams of cold sweat dripped from Sarah's forehead. She could hear her own heartbeat, thumping loudly in her ears, drowning out the chaos like a drum. The nose of the plane dipped down sharply, sending a rush of fear through her. Is this it? She thought. Is this how it ends? But then, just as quickly, a sense of clarity washed over her. A warm hand squeezed her own. It was Lila, looking bravely up at her, determination replacing the fear. In that instant, Sarah knew they wouldn't face this alone. Tess, the woman beside them, joined hands, and slowly more grabbed onto one another, forming an unbreakable chain of humanity. "This is going to be okay," someone yelled. "We can do this." Their collective spirit felt palpable, a weighty bond that forced through the dark air like light. Sarah's heart filled with a fierce hope. There was strength in numbers. They were not just passengers lost in a storm, they were a family bound together in resilience. Suddenly, everything shifted. The plane jerked violently again, and a loud, deafening roar filled the cabin. A blinding light flooded the windows. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, the world narrowing down to just the sensation of the hands gripping hers, and then, silence, the absence of noise crashed over her like a wave, cold and unexpected. She opened her eyes, confused. Had they landed? She could feel Lila's hand trembling in hers, the girl's breath a gentle flutter beside her. "Is everyone okay?" Tom's voice floated through the stillness. "Tom!" A woman called from the back. "We're alive." That realization struck Sarah like a bell ringing clear through the fog. They had made it. They were still here. But hovering beneath that joy was another thought: what now? What had they escaped, and what awaited them outside those doors, as the emergency slides deployed and the roar of rescuers filled the air? Sarah faced the open doors leading away from the plane. Suddenly, she wasn't just fighting to survive. She was about to discover what it meant to be alive again. Could she really face the world beyond? And what would they find waiting for them outside? The emergency slide inflated with a loud whoosh, a stark contrast to the tense stillness that followed the crash. Sarah took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling as she steeled herself for what lay ahead. Lila squeezed her hand tighter, and Sarah could tell the girl was still in shock, her small body trembling. "Are you ready?" Sarah asked, her voice wavering but determined. Lila nodded, her eyes wide, filled with a mixture of fear and bravery. Just then, another passenger, a robust man with wild hair, jumped from his seat and bolted for the exit. Chaos reignited as people began scrambling towards the emergency slide, anxious to escape the confines of the aircraft. "Wait! Slow down!" Tom shouted, his voice now ringing with urgency. But the moment was electric, raw energy propelling everyone forward, desperate to break free from the plane that had become their prison in the sky. Sarah felt an impulse to follow, but she paused, her heart tugging her back. "We can't leave without knowing if everyone's okay," she said, her eyes darting to Lila. "We need to get off, but we have to help." She turned toward Tess, the woman who had joined their chain of hands moments earlier. "We stick together," Sarah affirmed, her voice resolute. Tess nodded, determination reflecting in her eyes. One by one, they began to usher the other passengers toward the slide. The cabin had a surreal quality now. Smoke mingled with the faint odor of burnt machinery, and as they stepped carefully over debris, Sarah kept glancing back, ensuring no one was left behind. A man was bent over a woman who had fallen, but there wasn't time to linger. "Help her. I'll get the others," Sarah urged, taking charge as she'd done so naturally in her classroom. "Someone help here," Tess shouted, rushing to assist. Together they formed a small brigade, helping one another out of the wreckage, breaths coming in sharp gasps mixed with adrenaline. Finally, with Lila at her side, they arrived at the slide. The rushing air hit them like a wave, and Sarah felt a flicker of fear. Would it hold? Was it safe? But the urge to escape overwhelmed her doubt. She turned to Lila, who had stepped closer to the edge, eyes sparkling with a mix of excitement and fear. "Hold tight and sit down," Sarah instructed, her heart racing with protective instinct. With a swift move, they flung themselves down the slide, laughter slipping into the air even as gravity pulled them into a chaotic tumble. Lila's delighted squeal sparked a moment of unexpected joy amid their fear. They landed on the ground with an ungracious thud, both bursting into laughter, relieved to feel solid earth beneath them. But as they stood, brushing off the dirt, the endless chaos of the airport unfolded around them. Emergency vehicles blinked their lights like fireflies, the symphony of sirens echoing against the sky. Passengers gathered in clusters, some crying and others hugging, stranded souls finding strength in shared survival. Sarah. Lila. Her father's voice cut through the noise like a ray of sunshine. She spun around to find him rushing toward them, his face etched in concern yet alive with relief. Everything faded as he enveloped them both in a tight embrace. With the warmth of family wrapping around her, Sarah couldn't help but feel the churning inside her, something not quite right lingering just beneath the surface. "Are we safe?" Lila asked, peeking out from the protective cocoon of Sarah's hug. "Yes, honey, we are," Sarah replied, though something in her voice faltered. "But why do I feel like we've only just begun?" The echoes of their adventure still reverberated in her mind, yet as they stood together trembling and relieved against the backdrop of sirens and chaos, Sarah felt the weight of a new journey about to unfold. What had they truly escaped? And what secrets lay hidden that would change everything they thought they knew? With the warmth of the embrace still lingering, Sarah glanced around, taking in the frantic scene unfolding. Paramedics darted like lightning, attending to those suffering injuries, while others comforted shaken passengers. Lila clung to her tightly, her small frame trembling as the moments of adrenaline began to fade. "Let us find a safe spot," Sarah said, pulling Lila close and guiding her toward a quieter area near the edge of the chaos. They settled on a patch of grass, away from the flashing lights and the anxious crowd. Sarah tried to calm her racing heart, yet something gnawed at her. The whirlwind of confusion brought her focus back to Tess. "Where's Tess?" she asked, real worry creeping into her voice. "I don't know, she was right behind us." Lila's voice wavered, the uncertainty weighing heavy in her small frame. "Stay here," Sarah instructed, her protective instincts flaring up. "I'll go look for her." Navigating through the throngs of people, Sarah tried to shout Tess's name above the cacophony, but her voice got swallowed in the noise. Panic crept in with each step she took, each face she scanned. She spotted a cluster of passengers near the exit ramp, their expressions clouded with concern. "Has anyone seen Tess?" Sarah called out, her voice breaking slightly. "No." A woman replied absent-mindedly, her focus still on the chaos. "Please, anyone." The urgency in Sarah's voice surprised even her. She could feel her heart pound, fear thrashing in her veins as she scoured every corner. Finally, she spotted a familiar head of blonde hair just beyond the group. Tess was crouched next to an injured passenger, a middle-aged man with a bloodied forehead. She was gently holding his hand, whispering to him while others gathered around. Relief washed over Sarah, but as she took a step closer, she noticed something. Tess seemed so calm, so focused amid the storm of fear surrounding them. Watching her like this sent an unexpected wave of pride through Sarah. Tess had a knack for bringing comfort. "Sarah." Tess looked up, her eyes bright despite the chaos. "He needs help. He's disoriented and scared." "Okay, but let us get you both to safety first," Sarah urged, stepping in to assist. With the two of them working together, they helped the man to his feet, moving away from the scene. Just as they reached a designated safe zone, Sarah paused, horror dawning on her. "What about the cockpit? What happened to the pilot?" The words echoed in the air, and suddenly the world around her felt denser. The realization that they had no information on the crew sent her heart racing faster. What if nobody's coming to help them? Tess's voice was barely above a whisper. Sarah felt cold dread settle in the pit of her stomach. "We need to find out, we can't leave them like this." Their eyes locked, and in that moment, an unspoken understanding flourished between them. They couldn't just abandon the others, it wasn't in their nature. "Let us gather some people," Tess said, her voice gathering strength. "We have to see who else is willing to help." Nodding firmly, Sarah felt that familiar spark of resolve. Together, they turned back toward the crowd, sensing the pulse of urgency as they prepared to delve deeper into the unfolding chaos. Was their journey of survival truly over, or was this yet another beginning? They were on the cusp of something much larger than themselves, a call to action that would test their limits and reveal hidden truths. What would they discover about the people around them, and about their own strength when faced with the unknown? The chaos around the airport transformed into a tapestry of emotion woven tightly with threads of fear and determination. Sarah found her heart racing as she and Tess prepared to rally others to help. There was a powerful urge inside her, something primal that insisted they couldn't simply walk away while others needed assistance. "Hey!" she called to a group of passengers. "We need volunteers, anyone who can walk or help." The urgency in her voice rang clear, rippling through the crowd. Several heads turned her way, uncertainty etched across their faces, yet she saw the flicker of resolve in the eyes of some others. Inspired by an instinctive call to help, one by one, people began stepping forward, joining Sarah and Tess. Among them was a nurse, her scrub still partially stained with coffee. "I can help with injuries," she shouted. A firefighter just off duty, clad in casual clothes, stepped up too. "Let us make a plan." With renewed energy, they began organizing themselves, dividing into smaller groups to search for any remaining passengers who needed help. Sarah felt an electric spark of purpose light a fire in her chest. "This way." She beckoned, motioning toward the direction of the downed plane's cockpit. They moved as a unified force, the fear that previously enveloped them now replaced by a determination to make a difference. As they arrived at the edge of the wreckage, a sense of solemnity overcame Sarah. The airplane lay stark against the blue sky, a fragile tin can marred by the turbulence of life. She took a deep breath, willing herself to stay focused amidst the swirling emotions. A clamor of voices echoed from inside the plane. "Is anyone here?" Tess called, stepping cautiously through the doorway. Inside, dim light filtered in through broken windows, revealing scattered debris and uncomfortable reminders of the terrifying ordeal. "Tom!" Sarah shouted, her heart racing. Slowly, voices drifted from the front of the cabin. Relief washed over them as they spotted Tom, standing beside a co-pilot, both shaken but seemingly uninjured. "Over here!" Tom called, waving them over with a weak but genuine grin. "We're okay." The group surged forward, a wave of humanity following Sarah's lead. She rushed to Tom and enveloped him in a fierce hug, her heart swelling with gratefulness. "You did it. You saved everyone." "We worked together," Tom replied, voice thick with emotion, giving Tess a reassuring nod before turning back to the group. "But we need to get everyone checked out. Can you help?" As they organized the rescue efforts, determination pulsed through every person present. Sarah felt the bonds of community forming. Their struggle was not just survival anymore, but healing and connection. With every face she encountered, fearful, tired, tear-soaked, there was a warmth growing, an understanding that they were all in this together. "Let us check for anyone still inside," the nurse urged. They formed lines, working methodically to assess the passengers together. Encouragement surged with each successful reunion, each tearful embrace, and Sarah's heart soared higher. In that moment, she realized the depth of healing she sought wasn't just seeking reunion with her father but cultivating connections and shared struggles. Then, just outside the wreckage, a familiar voice echoed in her mind. Her heart raced, and she turned to Lila, whose eyes sparkled with newfound hope. "Can we find my mom?" the girl asked, her voice still timid but insisting on possibility. "Absolutely," Sarah replied, taking Lila's small hand in hers, feeling a bond grow even tighter through their shared journey. "We'll find her together." As they scoured the area, Sarah's phone buzzed again in her pocket. Her father's name gleamed on the screen. Everything flashed before her, the fear of reaching out, the missed opportunities. But as she opened the message, Lila's voice caught her attention. "Look!" A figure emerged from the crowd. It was Lila's mother, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks as she embraced her daughter, heartwarming relief radiating from them both. Sarah felt tears prick the corners of her eyes, witnessing pure love resurrect from the ashes of uncertainty. The moment reflected exactly what they had all fought for: connection, love, and unity. With the chaos unraveling inside the terminal, Sarah felt something begin to settle within her. In that whirlwind of devastation, she found the lessons of resilience blooming. She could reach out, heal, and build bridges while rewriting her own narrative. As they regrouped with those who had survived, Tom caught her gaze and nodded. They had faced many storms, but in this moment, they weren't just survivors, they were a family, forging paths of hope in the wake of hardship. "Together we can do anything," Sarah exclaimed, the words flowing, laced with newfound conviction. "This is just the beginning. We need to continue looking out for one another beyond this moment." The crowd erupted in applause, a sound of unity echoing through the air. In that instant, Sarah understood the first step toward healing wasn't just repairing broken relationships, it was forging new connections that would lift them all. As Tom and Tess joined her side, she squeezed their hands, knowing this was a transformative journey only possible through trust and unity. She took a deep breath, feeling the mix of pain and hope come together. In this beautiful cacophony surrounding her, Sarah finally felt ready. She turned her phone screen toward her, took a moment to look at all the missed calls, the opportunity to reconnect with her father sparkling like sun through the clouds. She would call him, perhaps under different circumstances. But now she was ready, not just for the unknown, but for the potential unfolding in her future. Together, they would rise from the ashes, celebrating newfound strength. They were all navigating together, ready to find their way back home, heartfelt and connected, bound forever by the trials they had braved, ready to embrace every next journey ahead. This was their moment. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. This is your chance to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Make sure to leave a like now to fuel the algorithm and comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Join us.